Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Princeton School of Public and International Affairs. I am Amanda Jamal. I am the Dean of the school, and I'm so happy to see all of you here today for our Dean's Leadership Speaker Series. Each year during my time as Dean, Princeton SPIA has designated a global region to focus on. While the school maintains a global perspective, the specific region on which we train our lens serves as a source for programming and research throughout the year. For 2025 and 2026, we are focusing on Europe. One of the most significant and consequential actions to have taken place on the continent in the last several decades is Russia's invasion of Ukraine 3.5 years ago and the warfare that has followed. Our guests today are uniquely qualified to share their front row perspectives on the conflict. President Andrzej Duda served as the president of Poland from 2015 until earlier this year. Following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, President Duda played an important role in coordinating international efforts to support the Ukrainian military. Prior to his presidency, he was a member of the Sejm, which is the lower house of the Polish parliament, and served as an undersecretary of state in the chancellery of the president, as well as in the Ministry of Justice. President Duda's memoir, It's Me, was published in August. Dmytro Kuleba was Ukraine's Minister of Foreign Affairs from March 2020 to September 2024. The youngest foreign affairs minister in Ukraine's history, he was one of the most visible and efficient members of President Zelensky's team following the Russian invasion. Prior to that, Minister Kuleba served his country as Deputy Prime Minister for European and Euro-Atlantic integration of Ukraine and as Ambassador and Permanent Representative to the Council of Europe. Among other positions, he is currently a Senior Fellow at the Harvard Kennedy's Belfer Center for Science and International Affairs and an Adjunct Professor at Sciences Po, Paris School of International Affairs. As you can see, Minister Kuleba is joining us virtually due to travel and scheduling conflicts. Welcome. A few brief reminders before we begin. Please listen respectfully and with an open mind. Remain calm and curious, and if you're inclined to engage with our speakers, please ask questions and don't give speeches. Challenge ideas and not people, and allow space for other voices. Thank you to President Duda and Minister Kuleba for joining us. I would also like to thank President Duda for taking the time to talk with the Liechtenstein Institute on Self-Determination's undergraduate international policy associates during their study trip last year to Warsaw. Thanks as well to everyone in attendance for today's event, which is made possible by the Joseph S. Nye 58 International Affairs Lecture. Dr. Nye unfortunately passed away this past May. He was a distinguished public servant, international relations theorist, academic leader, teacher, and public intellectual, and a great Princetonian. Our discussion is also serving as the opening session for LISD's conference on the future of Ukraine. The conversation will continue tomorrow with a closed-door meeting featuring practitioners and scholars from Washington and Brussels, joined by a select group of students focused on Ukraine. This is LISD's second such gathering following its inaugural conference in 2023. I am grateful to LISD and everyone at LISD for co-sponsoring today's talk, and to LISD Director and Professor of Politics and International Affairs, Andrew Moravchik, for serving as moderator. Andy, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm also a student of the aforementioned Joe Nye, who really was a wonderful model as a public servant, as a teacher, as a scholar. Thank you to both of you, President Duda, Minister Kuleba, for doing this. We have not very much time and lots of people who I'm sure want to ask questions. So let's just get right to it. And let me pose a question, perhaps a little bit of a grim question, which I think is the question on everybody's mind who looks at the Ukraine war today. And that question is there a militarily and politically realistic scenario for generating a successful outcome of this war? And to sharpen the question, I think we need to look around us at what people are thinking. Across the globe, in the United States certainly, but also elsewhere, people admire the bold fight of the Ukrainians for their identity, their independence, their sovereignty. And they admire the strong support that Poland has given them from the start. But many of those people are pessimists about this war because the conflict seems to have become a war of attrition that is being fought by a small country against a large country and doesn't seem to be getting better. I think we all know the arguments. Russia's very big, Ukraine's small. The Ukrainians on the front are outnumbered. I did turn. Can you hear me here anyway? Oh. Okay. Russia's a big country. Ukraine's a small country. The Ukrainians are outnumbered on the front. The Russians have adjusted to the sanctions, adjusted to the need for military production. President Trump seems to be somewhat unsure about what he wants to do. The Europeans can't do it themselves. So it leads a lot of people, no matter how sympathetic they are to the cause, to be somewhat concerned. So my question to both of you, starting with President Duda, is what should we respond to these pessimists? What is the scenario for a successful outcome of this war? And what realistically will people be able to do to help the Ukrainians achieve it?
Thank you very much. So first, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for invitation to this incredibly famous institution as Princeton University, one of the most important and one of the greatest universities in the world. And thank you very much for this possibility to participate in this meeting, in this discussion concerning situation in our part of Europe, in Central Europe, but I think, I have no doubts, situation which influences also the stability and the peace around the world. Thank you, Excellency Minister Dmytro, for your presence and for your participation. I'm very happy to see you again, even here on the screen. But I'm really happy I could be here with you. Ladies and gentlemen, you know, English is not my mother tongue. I'm not perfect in English, so please be tolerant and forgive me my mistakes. I hope you will understand what I would like to explain to you. You know, if I look at Ukraine, please understand two elements from my point of view. First is, I was president of Poland, elected by Poles in the general elections. And the first thing I had in my mind, in my brain, was interest of Poland. If I look at Ukraine and the situation we had and we have abroad concerning our neighbor, is I would like to have sovereign and independent Ukraine existing in this part of Europe and in this part of the world where it is now in their internationally recognized borders. That was most important element and objective element since the beginning of that situation. The beginning of that situation is not February 2022. It's not. It's really 2014, after the Winter Olympics in Russia, when Putin decided to attack Ukraine. Yes, decided to attack Ukraine. He launched the war against Ukraine and the occupation of Crimea and war in Lugansk and Donetsk. That was the beginning of the war, not 2022. 2022 was the so-called full-scale aggression against Ukraine. But that was second chapter of this war, not the first one. The first one was in 2014. And in my opinion, this moment, the Russian aggression against Ukraine in 2014, by the way, caused the change of perspective in American administration, because that was, in my opinion, the reason why President Barack Obama made the decision about the NATO presence in Central European countries, in Poland, my country, in Lithuania, in Latvia, in Estonia, and in Romania. That moment. That was the reason was that Russian imperialism was revived, and president and his administration, they understood that they have to strengthen American military presence in our part of Europe to support American interests, and I fully agreed with President, and I supported him, and I was really satisfied when he announced this decision, and during the NATO summit in Warsaw in 2016, this decision was formally made. But when we received first information from the intel that Russians probably prepare some kind of aggression against Ukraine, that was autumn 2023. After the huge Russian maneuvers, Zapad, they moved their military troops only a little bit. They started to relocate them along Ukrainian border, along the border between Ukraine and Belarus, and along the border between Russia and Ukraine. And you know, at the beginning, I didn't believe that Putin is really ready to attack Ukraine. I thought that he maybe would try to organize some new form of hybrid war in Donetsk, Lugansk, that maybe he would try to find a pretext for official Russian presence in Lugansk and Donetsk, because you have to remember that there were so-called separatists and the military troops of separatists. Of course, we knew that these separatists are regular Russian soldiers, but they were called separatists, and I thought that he would be maybe so sophisticated and smart that he will provoke some fights between so-called separatists and Ukrainian military forces, yes, and then he will declare, yes, we have to send our peacekeepers, Russian peacekeepers, to establish peace in this part of the world, to keep the order. That was my first way of thinking. But after few weeks, we received information that there is a lot of more military troops than that was before, and that the number of this forces could be about 160, 170,000. And after 2 or 3 weeks, the information was that the number of Russian troops increased, and this is about this is almost 200,000 soldiers. And then I asked, and the information that Putin prepared a full-scale invasion against Ukraine. And I asked our generals, our military chief of staff, is it possible that they would try to conquer and to occupy whole Ukraine, having 200,000 soldiers? And he said to me, Mr. President, in my opinion, it's absolutely impossible. They need much more soldiers to control Ukraine. One thing is to conquer Ukraine, but the second is to keep control. And to keep control, they need minimum, he said to me, minimum 500,000 soldiers. So 200,000 soldiers, it's absolutely excluded. This is impossible. So, you know, I still had doubts that it would be really full-scale military invasion against Ukraine. And frankly, I still didn't know what was the real purpose of Putin, what he really wanted to do. What was the real situation? What was the real level of his info? Did he thought that Ukraine would not start to fight against Russian invasion, that Ukrainians would not defend their country, just like it was in Crimea in 2014? Because Volodymyr Zelensky told me that, I remember that very well. Putin, he said to me, Andrzej, you know, Putin thought that we would not defend our country, that we have no spirit to defend our homeland. It's possible. The second possibility was that he was absolutely sure that that it's enough because Ukraine is so weak that there is no potential to protect the country. And the third answer is he didn't want to conquer whole Ukraine. He only wanted to get symbols. First symbol is Kiev. Why? You know, we Slavs are very sensitive to symbols. First symbol is Kiev. Kiev is a cradle of Russia because Russia was baptized in Kiev. So this is the beginning of Russia. And they really believe that Kiev should be part of the great Russia, and that the greatness of Russia depends on Kiev in Russian hands. So this is one potential possibility. And the second is Odessa, because, you know, I think that Putin doesn't think about the imperial potential of Russia, taking into account former Soviet Union. He rather thinks, in my opinion, in the categories of the Tsar empires, former Tsar empires. former Tsar empires, one of the symbols of the potential and the greatness of the Tsar empires was Odessa. Odessa as the gate for Russia to the world, and the gate for the world to Russia. Odessa very modern, Odessa very famous, Odessa the great place, yes. So that's, in my opinion, why he decided to attack this way to Crimea, but also, you remember, they tried to attack Odessa a few times. And I will never forget this decision we made together with President of Lithuania, Gitanas Nausėda. We talked on the phone. I don't remember, that was 20th of February, before the full-scale Russian aggression, and we decided we have to go to Kiev. We have to stand with Volodymyr Zelensky. We have to show to the world that we are together and Ukraine is not alone. And we wanted to fly, but our intel said, "Oh, no. It's absolutely impossible. Are you crazy, Mr. President?" I've heard, "Mr. President, no. Our suggestion is no. This is completely stupid idea to go to Kiev now." I said, "Sorry, you can assess this as a stupid idea, but my decision is made. It's just made." And they told me, "Mr. President, train or car? This is the only solution." So we decided together to drive by cars, and we drove by cars 500 kilometers from our border to Kiev. I will never forget this trip. I will never forget the atmosphere and our meetings with the people, and the petrol stations, our talks, our discussions with them. But I will never forget, especially my last meeting before the war with Volodymyr, when Volodymyr told me, "Andrzej, this is probably our last meeting, because I will never leave Kiev." He said to me, "Andrzej, you know, I stayed here, and if they take Kiev, they would probably kill me." That was these words were the last words he said to me, and I knew that is 100% determined, and you know, and I still believe very strongly that he really saved Ukraine. This is his attitude, his posture saved Ukraine, because it was such an important element for the spirit of the nation of Ukrainians to defend the country, that president and his crew and his people, they stand in the center of the Kiev, and they said, any step back, we will be here, and we will fight to the end, and we are ready to sacrifice our lives to defend our country. So that was the great moment, and we immediately decided that we have to support Ukraine. The beginning was very difficult, because you remember those first days. All the public opinion around the world were absolutely sure that Ukraine collapsed in a few days, that Russian military forces would be in Kiev, and that they would take Kiev, and Ukraine would collapse. And they were wrong, because Ukrainian society, Ukrainian soldiers, defenders of Ukraine, were really absolutely determined. They had very strong motivation. And they also had luck, because there was a lot of luck. in many situations. But they survived thanks to the very brave posture of Volodymyr Zelensky, of the president and his people. So minister was one of them, and I remember our first meetings. I was very moved. I will never forget my visit in Kiev after a month and so. That was 13th of April when I met Volodymyr Zelensky again, and I hugged him very strongly. That was really important moment. But before, we decided to send more than 100 our battle tanks, from the hands of our soldiers, because we didn't have these tanks in our warehouses. No. We had no reserves of tanks. We had tanks in hands of our soldiers. So we took these tanks from the hands of our soldiers, and we sent this at the first more than 100, and finally 350 tanks to Ukraine, and many other military equipment to support them. Also 15 our MiG-29 fighter jets, because it was very, very important at the beginning. I always emphasize that there are few ways how to support Ukraine. One way to support Ukraine is to send military equipment to Ukraine, to support defenders of Ukraine, giving them weapons, and also little weapons, because that was the discussion at the beginning of the conflict, that it's not good to send to Ukraine little weapons because I don't know, because it will be dangerous for Moscow, for Kremlin. I've never understand this rhetoric. I have to tell you, but this is one way to send a military equipment. Second is to establish some programs how to help financially, how to send money to Ukraine. This is second. Third is political support. Not that, so that's why, because I wasn't the president of the richest country in the world, so that's why I decided to support them first politically. So that's why 2 days after this full-scale invasion, I announced in the media that I propose to grant Ukraine candidate status for membership in European Union. And 2 days later, I prepared a letter together with 7 presidents of the Central European countries, and a letter to the European Council and to the European Commission that Ukraine, that the status of the candidate for European Union should be granted for Ukraine. The beginning was very difficult, and the discussion was very harsh in European Union, but in June, as you probably remember, European Commission, European Council granted this status of candidate for European Union for Ukraine, and that was politically, that was the very important step, because it's very important for Ukrainian spirit to see this visible support from the Western society, that Western society really support them, that Western society is really waiting for them. And the same is, but much more difficult, with Ukrainian membership in NATO. NATO membership, of course, is much more difficult because of the Article 5. Ukraine is now in a war, and there is ongoing war with Russia, and I have known very well that it is impossible that Ukraine would get this status during the war. Yes, but my opinion was we should send the official invitation to NATO for Ukraine. Why we should make this decision? Because this is very important political declaration and very important political signal to send to the Kremlin that we are really ready to take Ukraine as one of our allies, and that Ukraine will be one of our allies sooner or later, but will be. Why it was, in my opinion, and it is possible, because invitation means only the moment when the process of ratification of that decision, because it means change of the treaty, the North Atlantic Treaty, and the process of ratification begins. But the process is very long and could take years. But the process exists, and this is very important, and this is very important signal for Moscow, and this is also very important tool in the negotiations with Moscow. So that's why I supported this step, and I talked about it with the presidents of the United States, with President Biden, and also with President Trump. And I really believe that Ukraine will survive. That Ukraine will be the important place in the world in the map of the world. Ukraine, which will be independent, Ukraine, which will be sovereign country, democratic country, and part of the Western world, because this is the will of Ukrainian society. I am a Democrat, and the decision of the Ukrainian society is most important factor for me. You know, this is the question. Do you want to be part of the Western world? Do you want to be part of European Union with all the benefits and burdens? Would you like to be the part of NATO with all the benefits and burdens? If you want, we have to support you. So that's why I support Ukraine.
So that's a clear plan. Minister Kuleba, what do you think about the plan for victory for Ukraine?
Well, first of all, it's a big honor and pleasure to be with you tonight, Mr. President. I'm honored and pleased to be on the same panel with you. I literally could not be present in person because I was not allowed to leave Ukraine. So this is the only reason why I'm not with you in person tonight. For the sake of brevity, my answer to those who feel very pessimistic will be the words of Dwight Eisenhower, who once said, "Pessimism never won any battle." And if President Duda or President Zelensky or me or anyone else involved in this war were pessimists, we wouldn't be even talking today about the prospect of ending this war, because this war would have been lost very, very, very quickly. I will add one more point, because we are speaking in a circle of very intelligent and bright people. So I will give you another thought to reflect on, and then I will stop to give you more space for more questions. The two fundamental assumptions in Washington on the eve of invasion were this. First, Russia is going to invade. Second, Ukrainians are not going to fight back. Now look at Moscow. Moscow actually had exactly the same assumptions. They were certain they were going to invade, and they were equally certain that Ukrainians would not be fighting back. And they all, without coordinating with each other, of course, I do not imply there was an alignment between Moscow and Washington on this, but two very strong intellectual centers, intelligences, foreign ministries, think tanks, they all came to the same wrong conclusion about Ukraine. So even the smartest can make mistakes. And in most cases, they're pessimists.
Thank you. Short and sweet. Okay, we have 2 microphones here, and we have 15, little more than 15 minutes. And we have only one real rule for use of the microphones, which is students first. So who wants to ask the first question? And identify yourself and direct it to somebody.
My name is Nina, and I would like to direct it to both the former president and the former minister. I'm originally from Ukraine, as you can probably hear from my accent and my flower. And I was there on the 24th of February, and I really want to give you a short thank for everything that you do and everything that you did for Ukraine. It was very important for me to understand the support of Poland and be in that moment. And one of my questions would be, how does the role of the small circle in Ukraine and the circle kind of President Zelensky, because every country has a small circle that rules the country, how did that influence the outcome of the war and the beginning of the war, and how would it influence the future of the war?
Minister, would you like to go first?
Well,
You're
in the first 2 months of the war, there were no circles. Everyone was doing his or her job. Everyone was doing what had to be done to save the country. And 2 months later, first coordination meetings and staff meetings and intrigues and political under carpet fighting came back. And this is where circles were back into the play. Today, I'm sure you follow the news from Ukraine. I think circles have become a vulnerability or a liability. And we should all remember once again that there is no room for politicians in an existential war we are fighting. We need statesmen, those who care for tomorrow of the nation and not for how circles will be doing tomorrow. Everyone in Ukraine should be mindful of that.
You have a thought?
From my point of view, there were three circles I was involved in. First circle was a circle of Polish authorities in Poland, because few weeks before the full-scale Russian invasion, we've started to organize meetings in National Security Office every day, talking about a situation, talking about the data we've received from the intel, and about our future decisions, and about our capabilities, what we could do. One of the biggest problems we had was that we expected a huge wave, potential huge wave of refugees. Yes, in case of Russian invasion, because we know Russians in Poland, and we all know what to expect. And this is written in our families and in our brains, It's Russians, Soviets, Russians, doesn't matter what kind of Russians it is. They are coming, they are killing, and they are raping. And they are taking people to Siberia, to the Far East. And so that was one of the reasons why we were absolutely determined that we have to support Ukrainians who would run away in saving their lives in face of Russian aggression. So that was, I will never forget, I asked our then Minister of Internal Affairs responsible for border crossings and the border guards, Mariusz, because his name is Mariusz. Mariusz, can you tell me how many people we can send through our border crossings daily if you open border crossings? Yes, he said to me, Andrzej, 120,000. I said 120,000, not bad, not bad, because I received the phone call from then Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, and Justin asked me, Andrzej, would you open your borders? I said, Justin, I could promise you that we will do our best to protect them, to support them. And you know, and Mariusz told me, Andrzej, 120. You know what was the best result? A few days after the beginning of the aggression, 240. 240,000 people crossed our border crossings 124 hours. Yeah. But there was line on the border non-stop. And that was the first circle. The second circle was leaders of Baltic states, presidents, and me. That was the second circle. And the third circle was President Biden and a few leaders of NATO, including me. Phone calls, regular phone calls every few days. And that was these three circles I was involved in.
All right, who's next? Maybe somebody in the back? Yes, no, yeah. What about, yes, right there.
Thank you so much for both of you for being here. This is for Mr. Kuleba. So since January, the U.S. Approach to Ukraine has oscillated really rapidly. First, we're lambasting Zelensky in the Oval Office, and then we're praising him, and then maybe we're sending tomahawks, and then we're not sending tomahawks, and then we're calling for land concessions, and then we're saying they don't need to be land concessions. So how does Ukraine conduct medium or long-term planning about how to win the war when the support from your most important ally is so unpredictable?
Mm-hmm. Well, first, if I may, I would like to say that everything President Duda said about the first days of the war is true. And President, I will always remember day one, the 24th of February, when I visited you in Warsaw on my way back to Ukraine, and you said, in the presence of other members of government, we will stand with you for as long as you fight. And you kept your promise. And without your leadership, it would have been much harder on all accounts. So now that you told all these stories about refugees and meetings in your inner circle, these pictures popped up in my mind. These were critical days, and Poland made all the right decisions back then. Answering the question about the United States, I think the only viable strategy is the one that is being implemented now. Please meet President Trump and kick Europe to do more. That's the maximum that can be done. You cannot come at odds with. You cannot afford coming at odds with Trump. You have to understand that he may change his mind. that he may not do exactly what you need him to do. But President Zelensky and other European leaders have mastered the art of handling Trump. And I think what we have today is the best they can get under the circumstances. The key to victory is not in the United States. The key to victory is in the efficiency of Ukraine and Europe and the rest of Europe, and in them standing together. If these two criteria are met, no one can break Europe down, and Ukraine is part of Europe. Neither President Trump, nor President Putin, nor both of them jointly. So of course, U.S. assistance is indispensable when it comes to air defense or intelligence sharing. There are simply no capabilities that in Europe that can replace that. But on everything else, Europe just has to believe in itself. Europe has to deliver on its own promises and programs. Ukraine has to solve its domestic problems. We both have to get stronger here. And then Trump will respect that, and you will see changes in his policy.
Okay. Yes, up there.
Thank you both so much. And my name is Sonia. I just wanted to say Slava Ukraine. My best friend, her family were refugees, and they came across the border to Poland, and you welcomed them with open arms, and now they are back here with their family. The whole family is safe. I just wanted to ask, what can people such as myself do to help Ukraine? What can just an average person do? What do you need from us?
Donate and speak to those in America who do not support Ukraine. Make the case.
You agree?
Yes, I fully agree with Minister in this answer to your question. I don't agree of the future support for Ukraine because, in my opinion, Europe is not enough. Europe is not enough. In my opinion, it has to be our common support for Ukraine, European and American support. This is the question: who will encourage him? Who will encourage whom? You know, because in some cases, maybe the United States of America will encourage Europe to some activities towards Ukraine, how to support Ukraine. And sometimes maybe European leaders will encourage President Trump or the other president of the United States to support Ukraine. But in my opinion, the highest level of efficiency we would reach if we are together. This is first. You know, Minister, you know our history very well, and you know, and you remember the first September 1939. We had Poland. We had pacts with Great Britain and with France. That they will declare the war and attack Germany if Germany attacks us. And what? And Germany invited Poland, yes, full-scale invasion in this strongest meaning you can imagine. And Poland disappeared from the map because 17 days later we were attacked from the other side by the Soviet Union, an ally of the Nazi Germany, and Poland disappeared from the map. And of course, France and Great Britain declared the war, but they did nothing. So, you know, doesn't matter if you have this kind of pact or you haven't, because what's important is a real support. This is important. So I believe in our community in this broader sense that the United States and Western Europe. So in my opinion, if we talk about this, the support for Ukraine, we should support about NATO support for Ukraine, because this is, in my opinion, crucial element. And as I said, the ways of support for Ukraine, there is a lot of ways how to support Ukraine, militarily, financially, politically, but also if you do something to weaken Russia, that Russia is weaker and weaker and weaker, you also support Ukraine, because Ukraine is attacked and is invaded by Russia. So if Russia is weaker, Ukraine is safer. And the probability of the victory of Ukraine in this war is higher. So this is my opinion. But how to support Ukraine? You know, one thing I always try to emphasize and to explain it to my partners, especially European partners. This is to support for Ukraine. This is not a help. This is not the aid. This is investment. Because Ukraine, as a part of European Union, this is 40 million people, more than 600,000 square kilometers. This is Ukraine, yes, 2 times bigger than my country, Poland. Poland is 320 square kilometers. Ukraine is more than 2 times bigger than Poland, and believe me, tremendous natural resources, and huge agricultural potential. So Ukraine is a pearl, is a diamond. That's why, this is one of the reasons why Putin wants to have Ukraine, because Ukraine is a diamond. But you have to invest in Ukraine. You can call it help, but in my opinion, this is investment.
Time for one more question. Dr. Andrzej Duda.
Well, thank you very much. This is extremely powerful. Wolfgang Dansby-Gruber from Austria and Liechtenstein. I want to follow Professor Moravcek's question. The human element. It's not just material. And it's not just financial. It's just the man and woman who acts out on the front, or like now, greetings to Kiev, who expects a quite tough winter. What would you two propose? Should humans outside who want to invest, not just in the diamond, but in the people who live in this diamond, what should we do?
I should answer.
Well, go. Let's ask the minister to answer first. Go ahead.
I am in Kiev,
Yeah.
and I appreciate your thoughtfulness. Before I answer your question, I would like to make one point of clarification, because I think I should have expressed myself more clearly. I was not trying to say that it's good to be without the United States. No, it's very good to have the United States, but we are in a situation when Ukraine and other European nations have to have a serious contingency plan in case the United States will decide to suspend their assistance or to limit it, which already happened, and rely and develop our capabilities. But I agree with Mr. President that it is the will to fight, the will to help that matters the most, not the promises. Sir, who asked the question, I very much appreciate it. This will be a devastating winter. I spoke to my relatives in central Ukraine. My aunt lives in a village and they didn't have electricity for 24 hours in a row, like 24 hours without electricity. People living in cities, in apartment buildings, on 20th floors, they cannot use elevators. They have to go up and down by stairs. There is very little you can do to help those who will live through this winter in Ukraine. We will endure this hardship. It will be difficult. It will probably be the most difficult winter because our energy system is almost non-existent, I mean, destroyed. And, you know, I'm usually very good at answering questions, but I don't have a clear answer to what I really don't understand how you can help us. Pray for us, advocate for support for Ukrainian army, for Ukrainian budget, and we will endure because, you know, we don't have a choice. We have to live through this winter.
I would ask you for a final statement, but I don't think that you can do anything after that.
No. Thank you, Minister, that you, as a representative of Ukraine, said that your resilience is most important factor here, because I believe that you survive, that you will survive, but if we ask me how to support Ukraine and how to support Ukrainians in this situation, you know, I remember my wife a year ago and 2 years ago in the autumn, she organized the action of sending generators to Ukraine. Generators, they were buying generators everywhere. So that was, we had problem in Poland because there were no generators, and the dealers, they said to us, no, we have no generators. All generators were sold. So our warehouses are empty. So if you have any possibilities how to buy generators and to send generators to Ukraine, especially through some organizations, yes, NGOs and others, please do that, because this is really important to send them generators. They usually have fuel for these generators, but they don't have electricity, so generators are crucial.